Good morning, wrestling fans. Today is Thursday, August 10th, 2023. Lance Brock here. Hope everyone is having a good Thursday morning so far. And just a reminder, new episode of 360 Wrestling Fanatic is now available, talking about last night's episode of AEW Dynamite, and also to start off this morning's episode of GMWF. Have an announcement to make. A couple of times lately been kind of teasing a new podcast coming to 360 Wrestling Podcast, and I've been thinking for a while now about actually doing a non-wrestling podcast, and it will debut today at 4 p.m. the very first episode of 360 Anything Goes. And I know I said a non-wrestling podcast, but in a way the first episode of it kind of is about pro wrestling, almost, because on the debut episode I am talking about the 3 seasons of Young Rock, which of course was the TV show about the life of The Rock. And so there is a little bit of wrestling there. That's what's on the debut episode today. But in other episodes, what this podcast is going to be is, like the name says, anything goes. I'm just gonna, each episode, just talk about anything I want. A lot of times I could be talking about just an episode of a TV show I like, or anything else that might be going on that I decide I want to talk about. Could talk about a movie one week. Could talk about who knows what. Like the name of the podcast says, anything goes. And this is only going to be once a week. Thursdays at 4 p.m. is when I'm going to try to release it for everyone. And there's not going to be a set time, or a set length, I should say, of how long it's going to be. Just as long as I can say what I have to say. You never know. It could be 3 minutes. It could be 30 minutes, 3 hours. You never know. And like I said, don't worry, because even though I'm doing this non-pro wrestling podcast, the main, most important thing of 360 Wrestling Podcast will always be pro wrestling. But I just thought this would be kind of a fun idea to do. And like I said, I'm only going to be doing it once a week, and it'll be released Thursdays, 4 p.m. And like I said, I've been kind of getting a little better lately about schedule. I'm going to say I start at the exact time all the time, but lately, well, Good Morning Wrestling Fans usually is around the same time, and lately 360 Wrestling Fanatic I've been doing after the weekly TV shows and the premium live events and other big shows like that. So I've kind of been keeping it kind of on a regular schedule. And with this new podcast, Anything Goes, Thursdays, 4 p.m. And once again, today is when the debut episode drops, talking about Young Rock. I haven't announced yet what next week's episode is going to be. I have something in mind, but you never know. Just like they say in pro wrestling, cards subject to change. So instead of just announcing something already and then maybe changing my mind a few days or a week after, I'm not going to announce what that is just yet. But episode 2 will be available next Thursday. But first, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Episode 1 today at 4 p.m. So maybe you can check it out. And tonight we have Impact Wrestling on Access TV, followed by New Japan Pro Wrestling also on Access TV, and Ring of Honor on Honor Club. So I hope to have a new episode of 360 Wrestling Fanatic tonight, talking about both of those episodes, Impact and Ring of Honor. And that is all for this Thursday morning episode of GMWF. Thank you everyone for tuning in. And remember, as always, if you have any comments, questions, and you can leave your feedback from last night's AEW Dynamite in the comment section, either here on Spreaker, on YouTube, or whichever podcast app you listen to 360 Wrestling Podcast on. You can leave your feedback on last night's Dynamite. And remember, all the social media, even though I don't update as much as I should, we have the Facebook, Instagram, 360 Wrestling Podcast, and X, is it called now, formerly Twitter, at 360 Wrestling Pod. It's set up where every time I drop a new episode right here on Spreaker, it automatically gets tweeted out. So that's probably one of the best ways to keep up with 360 Wrestling Podcast. And of course, the subscribe on either Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, like I said, whichever podcast app or website you listen to on. And that's all for today. Once again, hope to have a new episode of 360 Wrestling Fanatic tonight. But we'll be back tomorrow for the Friday morning episode of GMWF. Remember, the debut episode of 360 Anything Goes today at 4 p.m. Eastern, right here on Spreaker and anywhere else you can find 360 Wrestling Podcasts. Hope everyone enjoys Impact Wrestling and Ring of Honor tonight. But until then, have a great pro wrestling day.